Have you ever had that feeling? Like you're trying to figure something out about yourself, maybe a big decision, but it feels like looking through, I don't know, a foggy window.
Oh, definitely. So much hangs on really knowing ourselves, doesn't it? Relationships, choices, just feeling grounded.
It's surprisingly tricky. And that's really what we're diving into today. Self-awareness.
Hmm.
Think of it as the bedrock for, well, pretty much everything else.
Absolutely. Not just some kind of navel gazing, but the actual foundation for growth. It's the lens, the compass.
And we've got this really interesting source material. It's essentially a dialogue, a conversation, exploring self-awareness from different angles.
Hmm.
So our mission really is to unpack that conversation and pull out the practical stuff, the insights, the tools that you can use to build that stronger sense of self.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, the conversation pretty quickly zeroes in on emotional intelligence, EQ.
Right. And it frames it as deeply connected to self-awareness, almost like two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. They break EQ down into sort of two main things.
Yeah.
First, understanding your own emotions, what you're feeling, maybe why you're feeling it.
And second, being able to read the room, essentially. Picking up on what others might be feeling, understanding that emotional language both inside and out.
Yeah, and they make this great distinction between IQ and EQ.
That really stood out to me, too. Like, IQ might get you in the door.
Right, your smarts get you the interview, maybe the job.
But EQ, that's about how you actually show up, how you handle pressure, connect with people, navigate the inevitable workplace drama or life stuff.
We've all seen it, haven't we? Super brilliant people who just struggle with the people side of things or kind of fall apart when things get tense.
Yeah, totally. And that's where high EQ really shines. The dialogue points out it helps you stay calmer under pressure.
And crucially, how you handle feedback, seeing it as useful info rather than a personal hit, which, let's be honest, is huge.
A total game changer. Plus, leading with actual empathy, not just saying the words.
And it's not just one big fuzzy concept, EQ. The source material actually breaks it down.
It does, yeah. It positions self-awareness right at the start, the foundation. You got to know yourself first.
Makes sense.
Then comes self-regulation, like managing those emotions you're now aware of. Then empathy, tuning into others. Social skills, how you interact. And even motivation, which they link back to knowing your own values, what really drives you. But it all stems from that initial self-awareness piece.
So it's like moving from just being emotional, maybe reactive.
Yeah, getting tossed around by feelings.
You actually understanding why you feel a certain way, what sets you off, and then, importantly, choosing your response. Steering the ship, not just drifting.
Exactly. You're leading yourself, not just reacting.
Okay, so this is where it gets really practical.
Yeah.
The conversation shifts gears into how we can actually build this muscle, this self-awareness.
Yes. Moving from the what to the how, which is key. They talk about concrete strategies you can weave into daily life. Journaling is a big one they mention.
Right, just the act of writing things down. Doesn't have to be fancy. Maybe at the end of the day, just noting down thoughts, feelings, reactions.
What happened, how you felt, what might have triggered it, and then maybe looking back over time, seeing if there are patterns.
Yeah, the dialogue frames it nicely, like having a chat with your future self or just holding up a mirror to what's going on inside.
That act of writing it down, it kind of externalizes it, doesn't it? Creates a bit of distance so you can observe it more objectively.
Creates a record you can learn from. Okay, what's next?
Meditation.
Meditation, which can sound intimidating, maybe.
Totally. People picture monks on mountains. But the dialogue really brings it down to earth.
How so?
Just taking a few minutes, 5 minutes even. Just sitting, noticing your thoughts, not judging them, not getting swept away, just observing them, like clouds passing.
And the benefit.
The key thing they highlight is creating a little space. A pause between the stimulus, whatever happens, and your reaction.
Like the classic example. Someone cuts you off in traffic.
Stimulus. Right. And the usual reaction is instant anger. Maybe a honk.
Or worse.
Or worse. Meditation helps create that tiny gap where you might notice the anger rise, but then choose not to react automatically. Maybe take a breath instead.
That pause, that sounds like where the power is. Shifting from automatic reaction to conscious response.
That's it, exactly. That's the space for choice. The third tool they talk about is feedback.
Ooh, feedback. The F word for some people.
Yeah, it can be tough. But the dialogue suggests being really direct, asking people you trust a simple question.
What do you say?
Something like, what's something you see in me? Maybe a pattern or a reaction that I might not be aware of myself.
Wow, okay, that takes some guts. Real vulnerability there.
It really does, because you're asking them to point out your blind spots, the things everyone else sees but you're oblivious to.
And we all have them.
We all have them. And the dialogue acknowledges, look, hearing criticism, even constructive feedback, can sting. The ego flares up. But if you can manage that defensiveness, if you can actually listen, they frame it as a shortcut, a fast track to seeing yourself more clearly.
So journaling, meditation, seeking feedback, really concrete things. But does this stuff actually, work in the real world? Do we see it?
Well, the dialogue brings up some examples of leaders who seem to embody this kind of self-awareness. It makes it less abstract.
Right.
They mention Howard Schultz from Starbucks, specifically that period when he left and then came back.
I remember that.
The point wasn't just the business move, but the reason behind it. It apparently came from this deep personal reflection, a realization that the company, and maybe he himself, had lost touch with its core mission, its why.
So it's about knowing when you're off course, even if things look okay on the surface, and having the, humility to correct it.
Exactly, that internal compass check. Then they talk about Oprah Winfrey.
Okay, huge example.
Yeah, and her whole journey, building this massive platform, but it being so deeply intertwined with her own process of reflection, learning, dealing with her own stuff, and then sharing that.
Turning personal pain into public.
Well,
Connection and maybe healing for others.
right. It shows how that inner work, that self-understanding, can ripple outwards in a really powerful way.
Okay, one more.
Satya Nadella at Microsoft. His shift in leadership style, moving away from maybe a more rigid, hierarchical approach
Towards work.
towards emphasizing empathy, collaboration, understanding people's needs and motivations, and that shift, rooted in a different kind of awareness, really transformed the company culture and its success too.
So the underlying idea is that leading others effectively really starts with leading yourself. You need that self-understanding first.
Precisely. And the common thread with these examples, they weren't afraid to ask themselves the hard questions, to really look inward.
Okay, so bringing back to the listener, how can you apply this? How does this play out in everyday moments?
Well, the dialogue gets into that too, looking at our own emotional reactions, using examples right from the conversation they were analyzing.
Like what? Give us one.
There was someone who described having this really strong, internal reaction when their writing got criticized publicly.
Ouch. Yeah, that feeling of being exposed, judged. Many of us know that.
Totally. And the insight wasn't just, oh, criticism hurts. It was realizing why it hurts so much. They realized their identity was super tangled up with being seen as good at things.
So the criticism felt like an attack on their core self-worth.
Exactly. And the shift came when they consciously tried to reframe it, to see the feedback not as judgment, but as data, fuel for getting better.
Moving from am I good or bad
Yeah.
to how can this help me improve? That's a big mental shift.
Huge. It connects to that growth mindset idea. Another example they used was someone snapping at their brother. Seemed like a small thing.
Happens all the time in families.
Right. But when they reflected later, they realized it wasn't really about the brother or whatever minor thing happened. The anger was actually carried over from stress at work, displaced frustration.
The classic kicking the cat scenario. But with a sibling, we misdirect our feelings.
We do.
Right.
And the value is in playing detective afterwards, tracing that feeling back. Okay, I snapped there. What was really going on for me earlier today, instead of just blaming the person in front of you.
And they had a great line in there about naming emotions.
Yes. When we name our emotions, we tame them. Just putting a label on it, okay, this is frustration, or this is fear, or this is disappointment, can somehow lessen its grip on you.
Makes it less of this big, scary, overwhelming cloud and more of a specific thing you can look at.
Exactly. It makes it manageable.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway? What's the core message you think stands out from this whole conversation about self-awareness?
For me, it really reinforces that significant change, the kind that really sticks. It starts inside. We often look outward for fixes.
New job, new relationship, new city.
Right. But the real leverage, the real power, comes from that ongoing work of understanding yourself better.
And the dialogue gives us a starting point, right?
Yeah.
A simple practice.
Yeah, just asking yourself regularly, what am I feeling, right now?
Yeah.
Why might I be feeling this? What is this trying to tell me?
And actually using those tools we talked about. Maybe commit to journaling a couple of times a week.
Trying just 5 minutes of quiet observation, meditation, whatever you want to call it.
And maybe, just maybe, Finding the courage to ask someone you trust for a little honest feedback.
Because ultimately that awareness, knowing your patterns, your triggers, your deeper needs, maybe your fears, that gives you choice.
Choice equals power, personal power.
When you see the pattern, you're no longer doomed to just repeat it automatically. You can choose differently.
So the message seems clear. If you want to level up your life in any way, start with you. Start with the person in the mirror.
Know yourself, lead yourself. The ripple effect starts there. Change the world by changing your inner world first.
Love that. Okay, so a final thought to leave everyone with.
Yeah, here's something to chew on.
Yeah.
Think about a time recently when you reacted really strongly to something, felt that big surge of emotion.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what underlying need might have been unmet in that moment, or what hidden fear might have gotten triggered? And then consider how might just a little more self-awareness in that moment have changed how you experienced it or how you responded.